A 10-year-old boy ran into a biker garage, tears streaming down his face. "He heard my grandma," he cried. The bikers roared to his home only to find the attacker already unconscious on the floor and his grandmother sitting calmly in her chair. What they didn't know, she was the founder of their club, and the rivals who sent that man had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The wrench slipped from Jake's hand and clattered against the concrete floor. Not because of the noise. The Iron Saints garage was always loud. Engines roaring on test stands. Classic rock bleeding from blown speakers. Someone arguing about carburetors in the corner. Noise was normal. It was the kid that made him drop it. A boy, maybe 10 years old, stood in the wide-open bay door. Skinny legs, oversized hoodie, face stir with tears and dirt. His chest heaved like he'd run a marathon. He heard my grandma. The garage went silent. Even the radio seemed to know better than to keep playing. Ridge looked up from the Harley he'd been working on for 3 days. Oil-stained hands, graying beard, eyes that had seen too much and somehow still managed to care. He was president of the Iron Saints, which meant every problem that walked through that door became his problem. "What did you say, kid?" The boy gulped air, trying to form words. "My grandma, she's bleeding, and I ran here because you guys help people, right?" That's what she always said. The bikers with the angel wings help people. Ridge was already moving. He grabbed a rag, wiped his hands in 2 quick swipes, and whistled sharp, "Church now." That was all it took. Diesel, the club sergeant at arms, killed the engine he'd been revving. Marcus shut off the compressor. Tommy dropped the fender he'd been sanding. Within 30 seconds, 8 men stood in a semicircle around the crying boy. "What's your name?" Riddich's voice was gentler now, but his jaw was set like concrete. "Mo." "All right, Milo, where's your grandma?" "Maple Street, the blue house with the white fence." "Please, he might still be there." Ridge didn't wait for more. "Diesel, Marcus, Tommy with me. Rest of you, gear up and follow." They moved like water, finding cracks in a dam. Fast, unstoppable, purposeful. Leather vests with hand-stitched angel wing patches caught the afternoon light as they strode to their bikes. Milo stumbled after Ridge, who turned and caught the boy's shoulder. "You ride with me? Hold on tight. Don't let go." Milo nodded, fear and hope wearing in his eyes. The Harleys roared to life in a synchronized thunder that rattled the garage windows. Ridge pulled Milo up behind him, felt the kid's small arms lock around his waist like a vice. "Which way?" "Left out of the parking lot, then straight for 4 blocks." The convoy tore out of the garage, pipes screaming, gravel spraying. People on sidewalks turned and stared. Some smiled. They knew the Iron Saints. Others looked worried. That many bikers moving that fast usually meant trouble. They were right, but not the kind they expected. Maple Street appeared 3 minutes later. Ridge spotted the blue house immediately. The white picket fence Milo mentioned was half collapsed, like someone had kicked through it. The front door hung at an angle. But something was wrong. Ridge had broken into places before, back in his younger, stupider days. He knew what a forced entry looked like. Doors kicked inward from outside showed splintered frames around the lock. Boot prints. Damage concentrated at the weak points. This door was different. The frame was intact. The lock wasn't broken. Instead, the door itself had been smashed outward from the inside, then pushed back into place haphazardly. Deep cracks spiderwebbed across the wood. The bottom hinge had been ripped clean out of the frame. Someone inside had hit that door hard enough to nearly tear it off its hinges. Ridge raised his fist. The bikes behind him cut their engines. In the sudden silence, they could hear something from inside the house. Humming. Someone was humming a soft melody like a lullaby. "Stay behind me," Ridge told Milo, but the boy was already pushing past, running up the cracked walkway. "Grandma." Ridge and Diesel reached the door 2 steps behind him. Ridge grabbed Milo's shoulder, stopping him from charging inside. "Let me go first." He pushed the broken door open slowly. The living room looked like a tornado had touched down inside. A coffee table lay on its side, legs snapped. A lamp was shattered against the wall. The TV had been knocked off its stand. Picture frames littered the floor, glass crunching under Ridge's boots. And in the middle of it all, sitting calmly in a floral armchair that somehow remained upright, was an elderly woman. She couldn't have been more than 5'2", silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, cardigan sweater buttoned to her throat, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like every grandmother in every storybook Ridge had ever seen as a kid, except for 2 things. First, her knuckles were scraped raw and bleeding. Second, there was an unconscious man crumpled on the floor 6 ft away from her, blood trickling from his nose, his left arm bent at an angle. Arms shouldn't bend. The woman looked up and smiled at Milo like nothing unusual had happened. "Hello, sweetheart. I told you to run to the park, not the garage." Milo pulled free from Ridge and ran to her, throwing his arms around her neck. "He was hurting you. I saw him grab you. And then you saw me handle it," she said softly, patting his back. "You should have kept running." Ridge stared at the scene, his brain struggling to piece it together. Behind him, Diesel let out a low whistle. "Ma'am," Ridge said carefully. "Are you June Morrison?" The woman's eyes lifted to meet his. They were blue, clear, and suddenly very sharp. "I am, and you're Ridge Callahan. I wondered when you'd finally come around." That stopped him cold. "You know me. I know all of you." Her gaze swept past him to the other saints crowding the doorway. "I know your club, your history, your code." She paused, a strange sadness crossing her face. "I helped write it." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ridge felt the world tilt slightly. What? June Morrison smiled. But there was weight behind it. Decades of weight. That man on my floor came with a message from people I used to know. People who want to remind me that leaving doesn't mean forgotten. She looked down at Milo, still clinging to her. They picked the wrong day to make their point. Ridge looked at the unconscious man again, at the destroyed living room, at the door that had been smashed from the inside. At this tiny grandmother who sat like a queen in the ruins of a battlefield she'd won. "I think," Ridge said slowly, "you'd better start from the beginning." Ridge crouched beside the unconscious man, checking for a pulse. Still alive, Diesel stood guard at the door while Marcus circled the room, taking in every detail like he was memorizing a crime scene. "Tommy, call Doc Stevens," Ridge said without looking up. "Tell him we need a discreet house call." On it, press. June hadn't moved from her chair. She kept one hand on Milo's head, fingers running through his hair in a soothing rhythm. The boy had stopped crying, but his breathing still came in shaky bursts. Ridge stood and faced her properly. "Ma'am, I need to understand what happened here. For your safety and ours, my safety." June's laugh was dry. "Son, I'm not the one unconscious on my floor. Grandma fought him." Milo's voice cracked with a mixture of pride and terror. "I saw through the window. He grabbed her arm and she moved real fast, and then he was flying in." Milo Jun's voice was firm but gentle. "Why don't you go to the kitchen and get me a glass of water and one for yourself?" The boy hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave her side. "Go on, I'm fine. These gentlemen are here now?" Milo looked at Ridge, who nodded. The boy reluctantly untangled himself and disappeared through a doorway. The moment he was gone, June's expression hardened. The sweet grandmother mask slipped, revealing something underneath that made Ridge's instincts prickle. "His name is Carter Mills," she said, gesturing at the man on the floor. "He works for the Red Stag crew. Rides with them anyway. Wouldn't call what he does work." Ridge felt his blood go cold. Every biker in a 3-state radius knew about the Red Stags. They weren't a club. They were a criminal enterprise wearing leather vests. Drugs, guns, extortion. If it was dirty, they touched it. The Stag sent someone to your house. Diesel had moved closer, his hand instinctively moving toward his belt. Why June met his eyes steadily. "Because 15 years ago, I testified against their founder. Got him 25 to life for racketeering and murder. He died in prison last month." The room went silent except for Milo running water in the kitchen. "His lieutenants want payback," June continued. "They want to send a message that betraying them even a decade and a half later has consequences." She looked down at her scraped knuckles. "Carter was supposed to rough me up. Make me scared. Make me regret. But you weren't scared," Marcus said quietly. "No." June's smile was sharp. "I wasn't." Ridge walked to the broken door, examining it more closely. Now, the wood had splintered outward in a starburst pattern. He ran his fingers over the damage, then looked back at June's small frame. "You threw him through this door." "Technically, I threw him into it. The door breaking was his own fault for not ducking." Diesel let out a short bark of laughter before catching himself. "Ma'am, no disrespect, but you're old, small, a woman." June raised an eyebrow. "I'm also a third-degree black belt in judo and spent 23 years teaching self-defense." Carter expected a frightened old lady. He got someone who remembers exactly how to make a man twice her size regret his choices. Milo returned with 2 glasses of water, his hands shaking slightly. June took hers and sipped calmly as if they were discussing the weather. Ridge pulled a chair from the overturned dining set and sat across from her. "Mrs. Morrison." June. "You said you helped write our code." I've been president of the Iron Saints for 8 years. Before that, my father ran the club for 12. He never mentioned you. Your father wasn't born yet when I wrote it." June set down her water glass with a soft click. The Iron Saints were founded in 1982. I was 24 years old and fresh off a bad marriage to a worse man. Met a group of writers who wanted to be different. Wanted to build something that stood for protection, not destruction. Her eyes grew distant. We had rules. Strength protects. Violence corrupts. That was our first law. Ridge felt like the ground was shifting under him. The Iron Saints code was sacred. Every member memorized it during their prospecting period. It was carved into a wooden plaque that hung in their clubhouse. Nobody had ever questioned where it came from. "I don't understand," he said. "If you founded the club, why doesn't anyone know about you?" "Because I left in 1985, June's voice went flat. "Some of the members disagreed with our direction. They thought we were too soft, too concerned with community image. They wanted money and power, not principles." She paused. "They split off, called themselves the Red Stag Crew." The words landed like a punch. "Wait," Diesel said. "You're saying the Iron Saints and the Red Stags used to be the same club?" "Yes." June looked at each of them. "We were family once, brothers and sisters. Then we chose different paths." Ridge's mind raced. The Iron Saints had always viewed the Red Stags as enemies, but he'd assumed it was territorial. Two clubs fighting for control. He'd never imagined they shared a bloodline. "Does anyone else know this?" he asked. "A few old-timers." "Most are dead or moved away." June's expression softened. "I stayed in town to keep an eye on things to make sure my grandson grew up safe." Milo Ridge said. Milo Jun pulled the boy closer. "His parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. He's all I have left." On the floor, Carter Mills groaned. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Ridge stood. "Get him out of here. Take him somewhere quiet where he can think about his life choices." Diesel and Marcus hauled Carter up, not gently. The man's legs wobbled. "Tell your bosses," June called out as they dragged him toward the door, "that June Morrison isn't afraid and she's not alone anymore." Carter's eyes widened when he saw the patches on the bikers' vests, the angel wings, the Iron Saints. "Oh, hell," he mumbled. "Yeah," Diesel agreed. "Hell's exactly where you're headed." Doc Stevens arrived 20 minutes later in a rattling pickup truck that had seen better decades. He was 70, if he was a day, with hands that still moved with surgical precision despite the arthritis that gnarled his knuckles. He'd been patching up Saints for 30 years without asking questions the law might want answered. June Morrison. Doc's weathered face split into a genuine smile. "Haven't seen you since that church bake sale in April." "Hello, Henry. Sorry to call you out like this for you." "Anytime." He set his medical bag on the coffee table Ridge had righted. "Let me see those hands." While Doc cleaned and bandaged Jun's knuckles, Ridge stood at the window watching his brothers work outside. They'd moved Carter to the clubhouse somewhere, secure where he could be encouraged to share what he knew about the Red Stag's plans. Milo sat on the couch, quiet now, but watching everything with wide eyes. Too wide, too aware. Ridge recognized that look. He'd seen it in the mirror as a kid when his old man came home with blood on his vest. The look of a child learning the world was more dangerous than he'd thought. "You're going to need to stay somewhere else tonight," Ridge said, turning back to June. "If the Stag sent one guy, they'll send more. I'm not leaving my home." June's tone left no room for argument. "Then we'll post guards, rotating shifts 247 until we figure out what they're planning. I don't need guards." "Yes, you do." Ridge's voice was firm but respectful. "You handled Carter fine. But what happens when they send 4 guys? 6. What happens when Milo's at school and they torch your house?" He paused, letting the words sink in. "You're not afraid for yourself." "I get that, but that boy needs you alive." June's jaw tightened. She glanced at Milo, who was pretending not to listen while clearly hanging on every word. "Fine," she said quietly. "But I have conditions. Name them. Your men don't treat me like a victim. They don't hover. And they sure as hell don't make decisions about my life without asking me first." Ridge almost smiled. "Deal." Doc finished wrapping her knuckles in clean white gauze. You should ice these every few hours. And June. He caught her eye. That was a hell of a hip throw. Haven't seen technique that clean since the Olympics. I'm rusty, June muttered. Rusty would have left him conscious. Doc packed his bag. Ridge, keep an eye on her. She's tougher than she looks, which means she'll push herself too hard. After Doc left, Ridge pulled up a chair and sat directly in front of June. Milo had curled up on the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with him. His eyes were closing despite his best efforts to stay alert. Tell me about the debt, Ridge said softly. June's expression flickered. Surprise, then understanding. You noticed, Carter said. You owed a debt. But this wasn't about money, was it? No. June folded her hands in her lap, careful of her bandages. When I testified against Marcus Brennan, the Stag founder, I didn't just put him in prison. I exposed their entire operation, supply chains, money laundering, contacts in local government. I handed the feds everything. Why? Because Marcus killed a kid. Jun's voice went cold. 17-year-old boy who saw something he shouldn't have. Marcus shot him in the head and dumped him in the river. When I found out, I realized we weren't just on different paths anymore. We were enemies. Ridge leaned back, processing. So, the debt they want paid is my life. June met his eyes. They want me dead, Ridge. But they want me scared first. They want to break me down. Make me regret every word I spoke in that courtroom. Then they'll kill me. The casual way she said it made Ridge's chest tighten. That's not going to happen. I know. June smiled slightly. Because I'm not the same woman who walked away in 1985. I'm not running anymore. A soft snore came from the couch. Milo had finally surrendered to sleep, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. Jun stood and moved to him, gently adjusting a throw pillow under his head. She pulled a knitted blanket from the back of the couch and tucked it around his small frame. The gesture was so tender, so automatic that Ridge felt something twist in his chest. This woman had fought off an attacker, thrown him through a door, and calmly explained a death sentence hanging over her head. Now she was tucking in her grandson like it was any other Tuesday. He's been through too much already, June whispered more to herself than Ridge. Lost his parents. Now this, he's got you. That counts for something. Jun turned to face him, and Ridge saw something in her expression that hadn't been there before. Not fear, never fear, but something closer to resignation. I thought leaving the life would be enough, she said. I thought if I just disappeared, kept my head down, lived quietly, that would keep him safe. She looked at Milo's sleeping form. I was wrong. No, Ridge said firmly. You gave him 10 good years. 10 years of normal. That matters. And now you let us help. That's what the Iron Saints do. We protect people. He stood, moving toward the door. I'll have Jake and Tommy take first watch outside. Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow, Ridge. He paused. Jun's voice was measured. Careful. When you search my house, and I know you will, because you're smart, you'll find things. Things I kept from the old days. Ridge waited. Don't judge me by what I was. Judge me by what I'm trying to be. He nodded once and stepped outside. The sun was setting, painting Maple Street in shades of orange and gold. It looked peaceful, safe. Ridge knew better now. The clubhouse smelled like motor oil, cigarettes, and the chili diesel had burned 3 hours ago. Ridge sat at the head of the scarred wooden table in their meeting room, church as they called it, with 8 pairs of eyes watching him. Carter Mills sat zip-tied to a chair in the corner, a bag over his head. He'd stopped whimpering about 20 minutes ago. All right, Ridge said, cracking his knuckles. What do we know? Marcus spoke first. Carter's just muscle, low-level stag. Been riding with them maybe 2 years. He says they gave him $500 to send a message to June Morrison. Didn't even tell him who she was. Did he say who gave the order? Guy named Vincent Creed. Goes by the Viper. He's the current stag president since Marcus Brennan died. Ridge nodded slowly. Vincent Creed. He'd heard the name mean son of a with a reputation for holding grudges. What else? Carter says this was just the beginning. They're planning something bigger, but he doesn't know what. Says Viper keeps the real plans to himself and his inner circle. Convenient. Ridge looked at the bagged figure in the corner. You believe him? Yeah, actually. He's too stupid to lie this convincingly. A ripple of dark laughter went around the table. Jake cleared his throat. Press, I got something. While you were at June's, I did some digging. Called my cousin who works at the county clerk's office. He pulled out his phone, scrolling. June Morrison owned a bar in 1983 called the Iron Angel. It was the original Saints clubhouse. Ridge felt that now familiar sensation of the ground shifting. The Iron Angel burned down in 1985. Arson never solved. Jake looked up. Same year June says she left the club. The pieces were starting to form a picture Ridge didn't like. There's more, Tommy added. He was the youngest Saint, only 26, but sharp as they came. I went through our clubhouse records, the really old stuff in the storage room. Found meeting minutes from 1984. Guess whose signature is on every page as secretary? He slid a yellowed paper across the table. June Morrison's handwriting, neat and precise, documenting a vote about charity donations. Ridge stared at the signature. It was real. All of it was real. She wasn't just a member, Diesel said quietly. She was leadership, which means she knows things, Marcus added. About the stags, about their operation, about where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. Ridge stood. I'm going back to her house. There's something she told me to look for. Want company? No, Jake, Tommy, you're still on guard duty. Rest of you, get some sleep. We're going to need clear heads for whatever comes next. Maple Street was quiet at midnight. Jake sat on June's porch in a folding chair, shotgun across his lap while Tommy walked the perimeter. They both nodded to Ridge as he approached. She awake? Ridge asked. Lights on upstairs. Kids asleep on the couch still. Ridge knocked softly and waited. June opened the door a moment later, still fully dressed. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. May I come in? She stepped aside. The living room had been cleaned up. Broken glass swept. Furniture righted. Milo was exactly where Ridge had left him, buried under the blanket, dead to the world. You said I'd find things, Ridge said quietly. Where? June studied him for a long moment, then walked to a wicker basket beside her armchair. It was filled with yarn, knitting needles, and what looked like the beginnings of a scarf. She reached to the bottom and pulled out a flat wooden box, maybe 8 in square. I should have burned this years ago, she said, handing it to him. But I couldn't. Ridge opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a leather patch. Not just any patch, a road captain patch, one of the most respected positions in any motorcycle club. The stitching was old school, done by hand with intricate detail work that would cost hundreds to replicate today. But it was the design that made Ridge's breath catch. Angel wings, the same wings the Iron Saints wore, except this patch was original. The first. He could tell by the slight differences in the wing shape, the shade of thread, the backing material. This wasn't a copy or a reproduction. This was the template every Saints patch had been based on. You were road captain, Ridge breathed. June's voice was steady. I planned every run, every route, every safety protocol. I made sure we rode together and came home together. She paused. Until the night we didn't. Ridge looked up sharply. June's eyes were distant, seeing something from decades ago. July 1985. We were running supplies to a shelter 3 counties over. Food, clothing, basic necessities. Marcus Brennan and his crew ambushed us on Highway 47. They wanted the supplies to sell. Wanted to prove we were stupid for giving things away for free. What happened? A man named Peter Chin died. He was 28, married, had a baby daughter. Jun's voice cracked slightly. Marcus shot him off his bike going 60 miles an hour. Peter's bike went into a ditch, broke his neck on impact. Ridge felt cold. The kid Marcus killed, the one you testified about, was Peter's nephew. Marcus killed them both 18 months apart, both because they stood in his way. She reached into the box and pulled out something else. A photograph faded and creased. It showed a group of young bikers standing in front of a bar. The sign above them read the Iron Angel. Ridge counted 15 people in the photo. Right in the center, with her arm around a tall black man who was grinning at the camera, stood a young June Morrison. She wore the road captain patch. Her smile was fierce and free. Peter's on the left, June said softly, pointing. And that's Marcus. She indicated a man on the far right. Dark hair, cold eyes, standing slightly apart from the group. Even then, we were family, June whispered. And then we weren't. Ridge carefully placed everything back in the box. His hands were shaking slightly. The Stags don't just want revenge, he said. They want to erase you. Everything you built, everything you stood for. Yes. Then we make sure they fail. Jun met his eyes, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely surprised. Why would you do this? You don't know me. Ridge held up the patch, the original road captain patch that had hung in their clubhouse in spirit, if not in physical form. Yes, I do. I've known you my whole life. Every time I read our code, every time we chose to help instead of hurt, that was you. He carefully rewrapped the patch. You built something worth protecting. Now it's our turn to protect you. A single tear rolled down June's cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Thank you, she whispered. From the couch, Milo stirred but didn't wake. Outside, a motorcycle engine rumbled in the distance. The war was coming. But Ridge knew something the Red Stags didn't. They weren't just fighting the Iron Saints. They were fighting their own history. And history always won. Morning came too fast. Ridge hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. He'd spent the night at the clubhouse staring at the wooden plaque on the wall. The one with their code carved into it. Strength protects. Violence corrupts. Jun's words. June's vision. And he'd never known. Diesel brought him coffee at 6 a.m., black and strong enough to strip paint. You look like hell. Press feel worse. Ridge took a long drink. We need to talk to June privately without the kid already arranged. Tommy's taking Milo to breakfast at Rosie's diner, keeping him distracted. Good man. They rode to Maple Street as the sun painted the sky pink and gold. Jake was still on the porch, eyes red from the all-night watch, but alert. He jerked his thumb toward the door. She's expecting you made coffee. Inside, June sat at her small kitchen table with a photo album open in front of her. She looked up when Ridge and Diesel entered, and he saw she hadn't slept either. Sit, she said. We need to talk before Milo gets back. Ridge pulled out a chair. That's why we're here. June pushed the album toward them. Page after page of photographs. The Iron Saints in their early days. Writers at charity events. Toy runs for Christmas. Cleaning up after a tornado hit the county. Always helping, always protecting. This is what we were supposed to be, June said. What I thought we'd always be? What changed? Diesel asked gently. June flipped to a page near the end. A photo showed the group outside the Iron Angel, but this time people were arguing. You could see it in their body language. Clusters forming, sides being chosen. Money changed things. Power changed things. June's finger traced over Marcus Brennan's face in the photo. Marcus wanted to expand. Said we could do more good if we had more resources. Seemed logical at first, but it wasn't about doing good. Ridge said, no, it was about control. June closed the album. He started running protection rackets. Said businesses would pay us to keep them safe and we'd use that money for charity. But then the businesses that didn't pay got vandalized, robbed, burned. Diesel swore under his breath. I confronted Marcus. Told him we were becoming exactly what we stood against. Jun's voice hardened. He said I was naive. Said the world didn't work on principles. It worked on fear and money. He wanted to rename the club, rebrand it. Said, the angel wings made us look soft. The Red Stag, Ridge said. His ideas strong, aggressive, territorial. Everything we weren't supposed to be. June stood and walked to the window, looking out at her quiet street. Half the club followed him. The rest stayed with me in our original code. We had a vote. Those who wanted to continue as Iron Saints versus those who wanted to follow Marcus. Who won? We did. Barely. Marcus and his people left that night. Took their bikes, their vests, and their hatred. She turned back to face them. 3 weeks later, the Iron Angel burned. Fire. Marshall said it was arson, but couldn't prove it. We lost everything. Our meeting space, our records, our equipment. And Peter Chin died 2 months after that, Ridge said quietly. June nodded. Marcus was sending a message. Join him or lose everything. Most of the remaining Saints scattered, moved away, gave up their patches, went back to regular life. Her voice dropped. I was pregnant. Didn't even know it yet. When I found out, I realized I couldn't keep fighting. Not with a baby coming. Ridge felt the pieces click into place. Milo's father. My son David. I raised him alone, far from the club life. Tried to give him something normal. Pain flickered across her face. He never knew about my past. Never knew his mother was a biker, a road captain, a fighter. I wanted him safe from all of it. But he died anyway, Diesel said softly. Car accident. Drunk driver. Wrong place. Wrong time. Jun's hands clenched. I thought I'd protected him by keeping him away from danger. But danger finds you anyway. It doesn't care if you're prepared or not. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. After David died, I got Milo. June continued. And I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistake. I wouldn't pretend the world was safe. I'd teach him to be strong, to protect himself, to stand up for what's right. She looked at Ridge. That's why I told him about you, about the Iron Saints. I wanted him to know there were still people who chose to protect instead of harm. Ridge felt the weight of that trust settle on his shoulders. When Marcus died last month, I knew they'd come, June said. The Stags have been waiting for an excuse to finish what they started 40 years ago. With Marcus gone, Vincent Creed needs to prove he's just as ruthless, just as strong. She met Ridge's eyes. Killing me proves he's not weak. It proves the Red Stags won the war that started in 1985. Inch over my dead body. Diesel growled. That might be exactly what it takes, June said. Viper won't stop with threats. He'll escalate. More attacks, bigger targets. He'll go after the club, the town, anyone connected to me. Ridge stood. Then we don't wait for him to come to us. We go to him with what? Violence. Jun's voice turned sharp. That's what they want. That's what they expect. The moment you attack them directly, you become them. So what do you suggest? June smiled. And it was the smile of someone who'd spent 40 years thinking about this exact moment. I suggest we dismantle them. Not with fists or guns or fire. She opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of papers, documents, maps, photographs. I suggest we use what I've been collecting for 15 years. Every dirty deal, every illegal operation, every corrupt official in their pocket. We don't fight the Red Stags. She spread the papers across the table. We expose them. We cut their power at the root. And we let the law do what it should have done decades ago. Ridge looked at the documents, bank statements, shipping manifests, property deeds, photographs of Stags meeting with known criminals. You've been building a case, he breathed. I've been building a weapon, June corrected. I just didn't know when I'd need to use it, she looked between Ridge and Diesel. But I can't do this alone. I need the Iron Saints, the real Iron Saints, to help me finish what we started in 1982. Ridge picked up a photo of Vincent Creed shaking hands with a man June had labeled as a known drug trafficker. Tell us what you need. June's smile widened. I need you to help me destroy them without becoming them. That Ridge said we can do. The diner's breakfast rush was winding down when Milo finally looked up from his pancakes. Tommy had been watching the kid push food around his plate for 20 minutes, barely eating. You okay, little man? Milo's fork clattered against his plate. Is my grandma going to die? Tommy nearly choked on his coffee. What? No, why would you? I heard you guys talking last night about the Red Stags, about them wanting revenge. Milo's voice was small but steady. I'm not stupid. I know what revenge means. Tommy set down his mug, choosing his words carefully. Your grandma is one of the toughest people I've ever met. And now she's got the Iron Saints watching her back. Nobody is going to hurt her. Promise. Tommy wanted to promise. Wanted to tell this scared kid that everything would be fine. But he'd learned a long time ago that empty promises were worse than hard truths. I promise we'll do everything we can. Your grandma included. Milo nodded slowly, then surprised Tommy by asking, Can you teach me? Teach you what? How to protect people. How to be strong like you guys? Tommy's phone buzzed before he could answer. A text from Ridge, get back here now. Situation developing. By the time Tommy and Milo arrived at June's house, 6 bikes were parked out front, and the tension was thick enough to cut. Ridge stood on the porch with June, both of them staring at something lying on the welcome mat. A dead rat throat cut and pinned to its body with a knife was a note written in red ink, or what Tommy hoped was red ink. This ends when you end. Milo started forward, but Tommy caught his shoulder. Stay back, bud. What is that? Nothing you need to see. But Milo had already seen it. His face went pale, then flushed with anger. They came here while we were gone. June turned, her expression controlled but furious. Milo, go inside with Tommy. Now. The tone left no room for argument. Tommy guided the boy into the house, but not before Milo shot one last look at the dead rat. A look that made Tommy's gut twist. That was the look of a kid learning to hate. Inside, Ridge was laying out June's documents on the dining table while Diesel, Marcus, and Jake studied them intently. This is substantial, Marcus said, holding up a bank statement. Creed's got accounts in 3 states, all showing deposits that don't match any legitimate business income. Because it's not legitimate, June said, entering with the note in a plastic bag. She set it on the table like evidence. Vincent Creed runs drugs through a trucking company he owns. Uses it to move product up from the border. The shipments are hidden in legitimate cargo furniture mostly. How do you know this? Jake asked. Because I've been watching. Waiting. Documenting. June pulled out a map marked with routes and dates. Every 3 weeks, a truck leaves El Paso and drives to Chicago. Make 7 stops along the way. One of those stops is here at a storage facility on Industrial Road. Ridge studied the map. You're saying there's a stag drug operation running through our town? Has been for 8 years. The room erupted in cursing. Why didn't you go to the police? Diesel demanded. I tried. 5 years ago, June's voice went cold. The detective I spoke to, Stephen Walsh, told me he'd look into it. 2 weeks later, Detective Walsh bought a new boat and took his family on a vacation to Hawaii. The investigation disappeared. Creed bought him off, Ridge said. Or threatened him. Or both, June crossed her arms. That's when I realized law enforcement alone wouldn't work. The Stags have too many people in their pocket. We need to go higher. Federal agents who can't be bought as easily. Tommy watched Milo standing in the doorway, absorbing every word. The kid's fists were clenched at his sides. So what's the play? Marcus asked. June unfolded a printed email. I've been in contact with an FBI agent in Kansas City. She specializes in organized crime. Her name is Special Agent Sarah Chen. Ridge's head snapped up. Chen, as in Peter Chen's daughter. Yes, June's voice softened. She was 6 months old when Marcus killed her father. She doesn't remember him, but she knows the story, and she's been waiting for a chance to take down the Red Stags for her entire career. The room went silent. She's flying in tomorrow, June continued. We're meeting at a secure location. I'll hand over everything I have. The documents, the photographs, the routing information, all of it. She'll coordinate with the DEA and ATF. They'll build an airtight case. And in the meantime, Diesel asked, Creed just sent you a death threat. A very clear one in. In the meantime, we act normal. We don't escalate. We don't give them an excuse to speed up their timeline. With all due respect, Ridge said carefully, acting normal might get you killed. June smiled grimly. Then you'll have to make sure it doesn't. A knock at the door made everyone freeze. Tommy's hand went to his belt. Jake moved toward the window. It's okay, Jake called out. It's Doc Stevens. Ridge opened the door. Doc entered carrying his medical bag, but his expression was troubled. Ridge, I need to talk to you privately. They stepped into the kitchen. Through the doorway, Tommy could hear Doc's urgent whisper. I just came from County General. Carter Mills was admitted 2 hours ago. Someone beat him half to death in an alley behind Murphy's bar. One of ours? No, this was professional. Broken ribs, shattered jaw, internal bleeding. Doc paused. Whoever did it left a message carved into his chest. Loose lips sink ships. Ridge swore. Tommy understood immediately. The Red Stags had learned that Carter talked, and they'd made an example of him, which meant they knew the Iron Saints were involved, which meant the clock had just started ticking much, much faster. Ridge returned to the dining room, his face grim. Change of plans. Agent Chen meets us tonight, not tomorrow. June, call her now. What happened? The Stags know we're coming for them. Ridge looked at each of his brothers. This just became a race. Either we bring them down fast, or they bring down everyone connected to June first. Milo stepped forward, his young voice cutting through the tension. Then we need to move faster than they do. Everyone turned to look at the 10-year-old boy who just spoken with the certainty of someone 3 times his age. Jun's face crumpled for just a second, grief and pride wearing in her expression. Tommy realized with cold clarity what he was witnessing. A boy learning the family business. And it was breaking June's heart. The Iron Saints clubhouse had been built in 1987, 2 years after the Iron Angel burned. It was a cinder block fortress on the edge of town, practical and ugly with a steel door and bars on the windows. Inside the main room smelled like leather, beer, and decades of cigarette smoke ground into the concrete floor. 16 men sat around the table for emergency church, more than Ridge had seen in one place in years. Word had spread fast. The founding of the club, June's history, the Red Stags' threats. Brothers from neighboring chapters had written in overnight. Everyone wanted to know what was happening, and not everyone agreed on what to do about it. We should hit them first, said Derek, a younger member from the North chapter, 23 years old, more muscle than sense. They came to June's house. left a dead animal on her porch. They beat Carter to send a message. We send one back, bigger and louder. Several heads nodded in agreement. Hit them, how? Ridge kept his voice level. Be specific. Burn their clubhouse. Trash their bikes. Make it clear that threatening one of ours has consequences. And when they retaliate, Marcus asked, when they come after our families, our businesses, innocent people in this town, what then? Then we hit them harder. Derek slammed his fist on the table. That's what we're supposed to do. We're not a charity organization. We're bikers. We're the Iron Saints. Ridge corrected. There's a difference. Yeah. The difference is we're getting soft. Derek stood, his chair scraping loudly. I've been a saint for 3 years. You know how many times we've actually stood up for ourselves? 0. Every time someone disrespects us, we de-escalate. Every time someone challenges our territory, we negotiate. I didn't join a motorcycle club to be a damn social worker. Then maybe you joined the wrong club, Diesel said quietly. Derek's face flushed red. Or maybe the club changed. Maybe it forgot what being a biker actually means. It means following our code, Ridge said. Strength protects. Violence corrupts. That's not negotiable. That code was written by an old woman who ran away from a fight 40 years ago. The room went deadly silent. Ridge stood slowly. Careful. It's true, though, isn't it? Derek looked around for support. June Morrison founded this club, then abandoned it when things got hard. Let Marcus Brennan take half our brothers and turn them into the Red Stags. Now she's back because she needs us, and we're supposed to roll over and play nice while they threaten to kill her. She didn't abandon anything, Ridge said, his voice hard as stone. She was pregnant and under attack. She made the choice that kept her and her child alive. And now we're supposed to make choices that'll get us killed. Derek shot back. I've got news for you, press. The world doesn't respect pacifists. The Red Stags sure as hell don't. They see weakness, they attack. That's the law of the road. No, said a voice from the doorway. That's the law of the jungle. Everyone turned. June stood there with Milo beside her. Ridge felt his stomach drop. He'd specifically told Jake to keep them at the house. But Jake stood behind them, shrugging helplessly. She insisted. He mouthed. June walked into the room like she owned it, which Ridge realized she kind of did. You want to know why I left? June addressed Derek directly. It wasn't because I was weak. It was because I was tired of watching good men turn into monsters. Men who started out wanting to protect people, then decided protection meant intimidation. Then intimidation meant violence. Then violence became the only language they spoke. She moved to the center of the room, and Ridge saw every saint lean in slightly, drawn by the quiet force in her voice. I watched Marcus Brennan go from my brother, someone I trusted with my life, to a murderer. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in small steps. Just this once. They deserved it. It's for the club. Until one day he was standing over Peter Chen's body and I didn't recognize him anymore. Jun turned slowly, making eye contact with each man. If you want to attack the Red Stags, you can burn their clubhouse. Destroy their bikes. Hurt their people, her voice dropped. But the moment you do, you become them. And then 40 years from now, someone will be sitting at a table just like this one, trying to explain why their club split in half, why the good men became the bad ones. Milo stepped forward, his small voice somehow carrying in the silent room. My grandma taught me that being strong means protecting people who can't protect themselves. Being scary just means you're a bully. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. Hard to argue with a 10-year-old kid who'd watched his grandmother fight off an attacker. But another saint, older guy named Garrett from the South chapter, stood up. With respect, June, we're not talking about starting a war. We're talking about defending ourselves. There's a difference, is there? June asked. Because from where I'm standing, defense and revenge look awful similar. So what would you have us do? Garrett spread his hands. Wait for them to kill you. Wait for them to attack our families. Hope the FBI moves fast enough. I'd have you be smarter than they are. June said, the Red Stags expect violence. They're prepared for violence. It's what they know, what they're good at. She pulled out her folder of documents. What they're not prepared for is this evidence. Truth. The law coming down on them from angles they can't fight. The law takes time, Derek interjected. People die while we're waiting for courts and paperwork. Then we make sure nobody dies, Ridge said firmly. We protect June, we protect this town. And we let Agent Chin do her job. That's the play. That's the coward's play. Derek muttered. Say that again. Diesel warned, rising from his chair. Derek stood his ground. I said it's a coward's play. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. He looked around the table. 4 other Saints, all younger members, stood with him. We joined the Iron Saints because we thought you stood for something, Derek said. Turns out you just stand around. He stripped off his vest and threw it on the table. I'm out. The 4 others followed suit. 5 vests piled on the scarred wood. 5 men walking toward the door. Ridge felt his chest tighten. Losing brothers hurt. Even brothers who were wrong. If you walk out that door, Ridge called after them, you're not coming back. Derek paused at the threshold. For a moment, Ridge thought he might reconsider. Instead, he said, good. Wouldn't want to come back to a club that forgot how to be a club. They left. The door slammed behind them with terrible finality. Motorcycles roared to life outside. 5 engines growing distant, then gone. Milo looked up at June, confused. Why did they leave? Jun knelt down to his level because they think strength means hitting first. They haven't learned yet that real strength is hitting last or better not hitting at all. But what if they're right? Milo's voice was small. What if not fighting makes us weak? June cupped his face gently. Baby, I threw a full-grown man through a door yesterday. Does that seem weak to you? Milo smiled slightly. No, ma'am. Being able to fight and choosing not to, that's strength. Fighting because you don't know what else to do, that's weakness. Ridge watched the exchange and felt something settle in his chest. 5 men had walked out, but 11 had stayed, the ones who understood what the Iron Saints really meant. All right, Ridge said, drawing everyone's attention. We've got work to do. Agent Chen arrives in 4 hours. June, we need your documents organized and ready. Marcus, Diesel, I want security tight for the meeting. Jake, Tommy, you're on Milo duty. Keep him safe and distracted. Where are we meeting her? Marcus asked. June spoke before Ridge could. The old Raylard. Eastern edge of town. Abandoned for a decade. Plenty of sightlines, only 2 access points. I scouted it last week. Ridge raised an eyebrow. You scouted it? Did you think I've been knitting for 40 years? June's smile was sharp. I've been preparing for this fight longer than most of you have been alive. Despite everything, Ridge laughed. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The clock was ticking, and somewhere in the shadows, the red stags were watching, waiting, planning their next move. The next morning, Milo stood in June's backyard practicing punches against an old heavy bag that hung from the oak tree. His small fists connected with dull thuds, each hit harder than the last. Tommy watched from the porch, coffee growing cold in his hand. Come on, Milo grunted, hitting the bag again. Harder, he wound up for another punch, lost his balance, and fell backward onto the grass. Instead of crying, he jumped up immediately and attacked the bag with renewed fury. Whoa, hey! Tommy set down his mug and walked over. Easy there, champ. You're going to hurt yourself. I need to be stronger. Milo's voice cracked. I need to be able to fight. Why? Because Milo hit the bag again. Tears starting to form. Because those men are coming back and I couldn't do anything last time. I just ran. I ran away like a baby. Tommy caught the bag, stopping its swing. You did exactly what your grandma told you to do. That's not running away. That's being smart. No, it's being weak. Milo's face was red, a mixture of frustration and shame. Grandma fought that man. She threw him through a door. And I just stood there crying. Milo, the guys who left yesterday, Derek and them, they were right. You have to fight. You have to be scary or people hurt you. He kicked the bag hard, hurting his toe, and crumpled to the ground, clutching his foot. Tommy sat down beside him in the grass. Your foot okay? Milo nodded, sniffling. Can I tell you something? Tommy kept his voice gentle. I used to think the same thing. When I was about your age, actually, I thought being tough meant never backing down, never walking away from a fight. What changed? I met a guy named Luis. He was 15. I was 12. Big kid, mean as hell. Loved beating up smaller kids. One day he came after me and I decided I was done running. Tommy smiled sadly, so I fought back. Got my ass kicked, but I fought back. Did he leave you alone after? Nope. Beat me up worse the next day and the day after that. And the day after that, Tommy plucked a blade of grass. Turns out fighting someone who's stronger than you just proves you're not as strong. It doesn't earn respect. It earns more beatings. Milo looked up. So what did you do? I got smart. Started walking different routes. Made friends with bigger kids. Told adults who could actually help. Eventually, Louise got bored and moved on to easier targets. Tommy met Milo's eyes. I didn't win by fighting. I won by surviving and being smarter than him. But Grandma fought and she won. Your grandma is a black belt who's been training for 40 years. She fought because she had to and because she could. You know what she told you to do? Run, because running was the smart play. Running got help. Running probably saved her life because she knew we'd come if you asked. Tommy put a hand on Milo's shoulder. You didn't fail, buddy. You succeeded. You just don't understand that yet. Milo wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I don't want to be scared anymore. Being scared is okay. Being smart while you're scared, that's brave. They sat in silence for a moment, the heavy bag swaying gently in the morning breeze. Inside the house, Tommy could hear voices. Ridge and June were going over final preparations for the FBI handoff tonight. Everything was in motion. Everything was planned. But Tommy saw the look in Milo's eyes and recognized it. The desperate need to feel powerful in a situation where you felt helpless. The desire to lash out because at least that was doing something. He'd seen the same look in Derek's eyes yesterday. Milo, can I show you something? The boy nodded. Tommy stood and took a fighting stance. Throw a punch at me? Hard as you can. Milo hesitated, then wound up and swung. Tommy stepped aside easily, and Milo stumbled forward with momentum again. Milo tried 3 more times. Tommy dodged each one without breaking a sweat. That's not fair. Milo complained. You're too fast. Exactly. You're trying to fight someone bigger, stronger, and more experienced. You're going to lose every time. Tommy crouched down to Milo's level. But watch this. He positioned himself like he was going to punch the heavy bag, then stopped. If I hit this, I might hurt my hand. The bag doesn't care. It's designed to be hit. But I care because I need my hands. He pushed the bag instead, sending it swinging. Same result, no injury. I don't understand. Violence isn't strength, Milo, it's just noise. Loud, scary noise that gets attention, but it doesn't actually solve problems. Tommy sat back down. You want to protect your grandma? Really protect her? Yes, then be the kind of person she doesn't have to worry about. Be smart, pay attention. Follow instructions. That's how you help. Milo's shoulders slumped. That sounds boring. Tommy laughed. Yeah, it kind of does. But you know what's more boring? Being dead or in prison or turning into the kind of person your grandma has to protect people from? The back door opened and June stepped out carrying a tray with sandwiches and lemonade. Lunchtime, she called, then paused, seeing them sitting in the grass. Everything okay out here? Yes, ma'am. Tommy said, just having a talk about strategy. Jun's eyes found Milo, and something passed between grandmother and grandson. A silent conversation Tommy wasn't part of. She set the tray on the porch table and walked over, lowering herself carefully to sit in the grass with them. Her bandaged knuckles stood out starkly white against the green. Milo, baby, come here. The boy crawled into her lap like he was 5 years old again instead of 10. June wrapped her arms around him and rested her chin on his head. I heard what you said about needing to be stronger, she said softly. About wanting to fight? Milo stiffened, caught. And I understand, I do. When you're scared and angry, fighting feels like the only answer. It feels like power. She turned him gently to face her. But it's not. You want to know what real power is? What real power is? Choosing not to fight when you could. Real power is being so strong that you don't need to prove it. June touched his cheek. The man who came to our house, Carter, he fought because he was weak. Because someone told him to, and he didn't know how to say no. I fought because I had to protect us both. You ran because I told you to. Even though you were scared. Even though you wanted to help. That's discipline. That's strength. But what if they come back and I can't help you? Jun's eyes welled up. Oh, sweetheart. You help me every day just by being you. By being good and kind and brave, she pulled him close again. I don't need you to be a fighter. I need you to be my grandson. That's all. That's enough. Milo buried his face in her shoulder and cried. Really cried this time. Not angry tears, but the kind that came from relief and exhaustion and fear finally finding release. Tommy stood quietly and walked back to the porch, giving them privacy. Through the window, he could see Ridge on his phone organizing the evening's operation. Diesel was cleaning weapons just in case. Marcus studied maps and routes. They were preparing for war while preaching peace. And Tommy wondered, as he watched Milo cry in his grandmother's arms, which message would actually stick. Which lesson would the boy remember when this was all over? The words about wisdom and restraint? Or the image of his grandmother's bloody knuckles and a man unconscious on the floor? Tommy hoped it would be the words, but he remembered being 10 years old, and he remembered that actions always spoke louder. The old rail yard sprawled across 12 acres of rusted track and crumbling warehouse foundations. Nothing had moved through here since the automotive plant closed in 2008, leaving behind a ghost town of industrial decay. Perfect for a covert meeting. Ridge arrived first, an hour before the scheduled time. He parked his bike behind a collapsed loading dock and walked the perimeter on foot, checking sightlines, escape routes, places where an ambush could hide. Everything was clear. By 8 p.m., the rest of the team had assembled. Diesel and Marcus on overwatch from 2 separate rooftops. Jake positioned at the south entrance, Tommy at the north. Ridge stayed with June in the center of the yard beside the rusted shell of an old freight car. June had changed from her grandmother clothes into something more practical. Dark jeans, boots, a fitted jacket. She looked like she'd stepped out of a photo from 1984. A warrior in retirement, stepping back onto the battlefield one last time. "You sure Agent Chin is coming alone?" Ridge asked, checking his watch. "That's what she said. She doesn't want to spook us, and she can't risk the Red Stags having eyes inside her field office." June clutched a leather messenger bag containing copies of all her evidence. The originals were hidden. Insurance, she'd called it. Headlights swept across the rail yard entrance at exactly 8:15 p.m. A dark sedan rolled slowly through the gates. No sirens, no backup visible. It stopped 30 FT from where Ridge and June stood. The driver's door opened. Special Agent Sarah Chen was 34 years old, Chinese-American, 5 on 6, with her black hair pulled back in a non-nonsense ponytail. She wore a FBI windbreaker over a button-down shirt and slacks. Her hand rested casually near her service weapon, but it was her eyes that caught Ridge's attention. Dark, intense, and carrying the weight of a lifelong mission. "June Morrison," Sarah said, walking forward with her credentials held out. "I've waited a long time to meet you." Agent Chen Jun's voice was steady, but Ridge heard the emotion beneath it. "You look like your father." "I wouldn't know. I only have 3 pictures of him." Sarah stopped a respectful distance away. "But thank you for saying so." The 2 women studied each other for a long moment, connected by tragedy, separated by decades, united by a common enemy. "I brought everything," June said, holding out the messenger bag, financial records, shipment logs, photographs, witness accounts, 15 years of documentation on the Red Stag cruise operations. Sarah took the bag, opened it, and began flipping through the contents. Her expression remained neutral, but Ridge saw her grip tighten on a photograph, Marcus Brennan's mug shot from 2010. "This is substantial," Sarah said quietly. "More than substantial. This is," she looked up, "this is enough to bring RICO charges against their entire leadership." "That's the idea," June said. "The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act," Sarah continued, more to herself than them. "If I can prove the Red Stags operate as a criminal enterprise, which this evidence does, I can dismantle the entire organization. Not just arrest individuals, but seize their assets, their property, their businesses, everything." "How long?" Ridge asked to build a prosecutable case. "I can have warrants ready in 72 hours. We'll coordinate with DEA for the drug trafficking, ATF for the weapons charges, and local police for the assault and extortion." Sarah closed the bag carefully. "But here's the problem. The moment we move, the Red Stags will know. They'll scatter, destroy evidence, disappear. We'll get some, but not all. So what do you need?" Jen asked. Sarah met her eyes directly. "I need them grouped together. All of them. The leadership, the soldiers, everyone who matters. I need them in one place at one time so we can take them all down simultaneously. How do we make that happen?" "We give them a target they can't resist." Sarah looked at Ridge. "We give them her." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Absolutely not," Ridge said immediately. "It's the only way," Sarah countered. "June is the one person Vincent Creed wants dead more than anyone else. She represents everything they hate, the original code, the choice to walk away, the testimony that put Marcus Brennan in prison. If we let it be known that June is vulnerable, they'll come for her with everything they have." "You're talking about using her as bait," Ridge said, anger rising in his voice. "I'm talking about ending this," Sarah said firmly. "If we pick them off one by one, it'll take years. They'll adapt, recruit new members, change tactics. But if we take them all at once, leadership, infrastructure, money, the Red Stag crew dies permanently." Jen spoke before Ridge could argue. "What did you have in mind?" June, Ridge started. She held up a hand. Let her speak. Sarah pulled out her phone, bringing up a map. There's an abandoned church on Highway 47. St. Michael's, it's been closed for 6 years. Sits on 15 acres, only one access road. We spread word that you're meeting someone there to discuss leaving town permanently. Make it seem like you're running scared. They'll send everyone, June said, understanding dawning. Everyone, Sarah confirmed, because if you leave, you take away their revenge. They have to stop you before you disappear. We set up a perimeter, let them come in, and then spring the trap. FBI, DEA, ATF, state police, full tactical response. We end them in one night. Ridge looked at June, whose expression was unreadable. This is insane. You're talking about painting a target on her back and hoping the FBI shows up in time. I'm talking about finishing what my father started, Sarah said quietly. He died trying to protect people from the red stags. So did dozens of others over the years. This is our chance to make sure nobody else has to. June turned to Ridge. It could work. It could get you killed. I'm 71 years old, Ridge. I've lived a long life. Milo's young. This town's young. If I can end this threat now, permanently, that's worth the risk. Not to me, it isn't, Ridge said. I didn't find out about you just to watch you sacrifice yourself. June smiled sadly. You sound like Peter Chen. He used to say the same thing. She looked at Sarah. Your father was a good man. Brave, stubborn. He'd be proud of you. Sarah's jaw tightened. Will you do it? June was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Yes, but on one condition. Name it. The Iron Saints are part of the operation. You want me to walk into that church? My family walks in with me. Sarah shook her head. I can't authorize civilians. Then we're done here. Jun's voice turned to steel. I won't let federal agents I've never met be the only thing standing between me and 30 armed bikers. Either the Saints are part of this or find another way. Sarah and Ridge locked eyes. Something passed between them. Mutual respect mixed with frustration. Fine, Sarah said. But you follow my orders, all of you. This is a federal operation, which means I'm in command. Agreed, Ridge said. When, 3 days? Saturday night. That gives me time to position assets and coordinate with other agencies. Sarah closed her phone. And it gives the Red Stags time to hear the rumors and plan their attack. How do we spread the word? Ridge asked. June smiled grimly. Leave that to me. I know exactly who to call. Sarah climbed back into her sedan, the evidence bag secured in her trunk. Before closing the door, she looked back at June. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for everything you've done for my father's memory. Thank you for finishing his fight, June replied. The sedan drove away, taillights disappearing into the night. Ridge waited until the sound of the engine faded completely before turning to June. You're sure about this? No, June admitted. But I'm tired, Ridge. I've been running from this for 40 years. I'm ready to stop. What about Milo? Jun's composure cracked slightly. He stays far away from St. Michael's. Whatever happens there, he doesn't see it. Doesn't know about it until it's over. Ridge nodded. I'll make sure of it. Above them, Marcus's voice crackled over the radio. Press, we've got movement. 2 bikes just passed the north entrance. Didn't stop, but they were definitely watching. Ridge felt ice in his veins. The stags already know we're here. Good, June said quietly. Let them watch. Let them see. I'm not hiding anymore. She turned and walked toward Ridge's bike, her back straight, her head high. And Ridge understood then what he was witnessing. June Morrison wasn't preparing for a trap. She was preparing for war. Tuesday morning, June made a phone call. Ridge sat across from her at the kitchen table, listening to her half of the conversation. She dialed a number from memory. No contacts list. Nothing traceable. Bobby, it's June Morrison. Yes, it's been a long time. I need you to spread some information for me. Quietly, she paused, listening. Tell anyone who will listen that I'm meeting someone at St. Michael's Church on Saturday night. 10 p.m., tell them I'm scared and planning to leave town permanently. No, Bobby, it's not a trap. It's the truth. Thank you. She hung up. Bobby Hernandez, she explained, used to ride with the Saints back in '83. Now he tends bar at Murphy's, the place where half the Red Stags drink. So by tonight, every stag in the state will know, Ridge said. That's the idea. Over the next 3 days, the Iron Saints moved like a precision machine. Tuesday afternoon, Marcus and Diesel drove to St. Michael's to scout the location. The abandoned church sat on a hill surrounded by open fields, beautiful and exposed. They mapped every entrance, every window, every angle where a shooter could hide, took photos, measured distances, planned defensive positions. This place is a kill box, Diesel muttered, standing in the empty nave. Broken pews lay scattered like fallen soldiers. Stained glass windows were shattered, letting in streams of dusty sunlight. If the stags get inside before the feds lock it down, we're sitting ducks. Then we make sure they don't get inside, Marcus said. We control the perimeter. June stays in the church with Sarah's team. We form a barrier outside. And if they break through, Marcus checked his pistol. They won't. Wednesday morning, Ridge met with Special Agent Chen at a coffee shop 40 mi outside town. She brought tactical maps and communication equipment, encrypted radios for each saint who'd be on site. My team will be in position by 900 p.m., Sarah explained, spreading the maps across a back booth. Snipers here, and here. Tactical units staged in these tree lines. Local police will block Highway 472 MI in both directions once we get confirmation the stags are moving. What about air support? 2 helicopters on standby. We're treating this like a high V-value target extraction because that's exactly what it is. Ridge studied the plans. Everything looked solid on paper. But he'd learned a long time ago that plans died the moment real bullets started flying. What's our fallback if things go sideways? Sarah met his eyes. We don't have one. If this fails, the red stags will disappear and we'll never get another chance like this. So it doesn't fail. Wednesday afternoon, Tommy and Jake took Milo to an amusement park 2 counties over. The kid needed to feel like a kid for a few hours before everything changed. Milo rode the roller coaster 3 times, screaming with joy and terror. Ate cotton candy until he felt sick. Won a stuffed bear at the ring toss. This is the best day ever, he said, hugging the bear. Tommy's chest ached. The kid had no idea that in 3 days his grandmother would be standing in an abandoned church while a biker gang tried to kill her. Hey, Milo, Tommy crouched down. Your grandma loves you more than anything in the world. You know that, right? I know, Milo smiled. She tells me every day. Good, don't forget it. No matter what happens, Milo's smile faltered. Are you going somewhere? No, buddy. Just making sure you know. Thursday night, the Iron Saints received their first confirmation that the trap was working. Diesel's phone buzzed at midnight. A text from an informant, a bartender at a stag hangout in the next county. Big meeting tonight. Whole crew's talking about Saturday. They're planning something? Ridge called an emergency meeting. Every saint still loyal to the code showed up. 11 men ready to stand between June Morrison and the darkness coming for her. This is it, Ridge said, standing before his brothers. Saturday night. We either end the Red Stags permanently or we go down trying. Anyone wants out? Speak now. No judgment. Silence. Jake spoke up. We're with you. Press all the way. Heads nodded around the table. Ridge felt a swell of pride so strong it almost hurt. These men weren't thugs or criminals. They were protectors. Guardians, everything June had wanted the Iron Saints to be. Then let's make her proud, Ridge said. Friday morning, June spent the day putting her affairs in order. She updated her will, wrote letters to Milo, one for every birthday until he turned 25, sealed in envelopes marked, "Do not open until." Ridge found her at the kitchen table, addressing the envelopes with careful precision. Planning for the worst? He asked gently. Planning for reality, June corrected. I'm not a young woman, Ridge. Saturday night might be the last fight I have in me. I need to make sure Milo's taken care of if something happens. Nothing's going to happen. You can't promise that. She set down her pen. But I can make sure that if I don't walk out of St. Michael's, Milo knows I loved him. That I did this so he could grow up safe, so he'd never have to look over his shoulder the way I have for 40 years. She handed Ridge an envelope marked for Milo. If I don't come home, if things go bad, she said quietly, make sure he gets this and make sure he understands I didn't leave him by choice. Ridge took the envelope with shaking hands. June, promise me. I promise. Friday night, Vincent Viper Creed stood in the Red Stag clubhouse addressing 43 men, every member and prospect in 3 states. Saturday night, he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. We settle an old debt. June Morrison thinks she can hide behind the FBI and some washed-up duders. She thinks 40 years makes her safe. He smiled cold and sharp. She's wrong. We ride at 9:30 p.m., full colors, full force. When we're done, there won't be an Iron Saint left standing. And that old woman will finally understand what happens when you betray family. The room erupted in cheers and the sound of fists pounding on tables. War was coming. Saturday, 6 miles p.m. June stood in her bedroom staring at her reflection. She dressed in the clothes she wore 40 years ago, leather pants, boots, a black shirt. In her hands, she held the original road captain patch. She pinned it to her vest. For the first time in decades, June Morrison looked like herself. Downstairs, Milo was at a friend's house for a sleepover, safely away from whatever was about to happen. He'd hugged her extra tight when she dropped him off, like some part of him knew. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, baby, more than all the stars." Now Ridge waited in the living room with 10 other saints. They wore their vests, their patches, their pride. June descended the stairs and every man stood. She wasn't just June Morrison anymore. She was the road captain, the founder, the beginning of everything they'd become. "Let's go," she said simply. They walked out together, 11 bikers and one grandmother, heading toward a showdown 40 years in the making. The sun set behind them, painting the sky blood red. By morning, the Red Stag crew would either be destroyed or the Iron Saints would be dead. There was no middle ground left. Not anymore. St. Michael's Church rose from the hilltop like a tombstone, its white paint peeling, its cross tilted at an angle that suggested even God had abandoned this place. Ridge arrived first, 30 minutes early. His headlight swept across the empty parking lot, illuminating cracked asphalt and weeds pushing through concrete. He killed the engine and listened. Silence, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that came before storms. By 9:15 p.m., everyone was in position. Jun stood inside the church with Special Agent Chen and 6 FBI agents in tactical gear. The Saints formed a perimeter outside, Ridge at the front entrance, Diesel and Marcus on the flanks, the others covering the rear and sides. Sarah's snipers were invisible in the darkness, but Ridge knew they were there. 3 shooters with night vision scopes and clear lines of fire. State police waited 2 mi down Highway 47 in both directions, ready to block any escape routes. Everything was perfect, which meant something was about to go very wrong. "All units, this is Chen." Sarah's voice crackled over the encrypted radio. "We have multiple vehicles approaching from the south. Estimate 30 to 40 individuals. E to 3 minutes. Ridge's heart hammered. Copy that. Saints, hold positions. Do not engage unless they fire first. Let them come to us." The rumble of motorcycles grew louder, then louder. Still until the sound was a physical thing, shaking the ground, rattling the church windows. Headlights appeared on the access road. Too many to count. A river of chrome and leather rolling toward them with terrible purpose. The Red Stags had come in force. They stopped 50 yards from the church. Engines idling, a wall of bikes and bad intentions. Vincent, Viper, Creed sat at the front on a custom chopper flanked by his lieutenants. Behind them, 40 men waited for the order to attack. Viper killed his engine. Silence fell again, heavier this time. He climbed off his bike slowly, deliberately walked forward until he stood 20 FT from where Ridge blocked the church entrance. "Ridge Callahan," Viper said. His voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "I expected to find June Morrison hiding like a scared rabbit. Instead, I find the Iron Saints playing bodyguard." He smiled. "How noble." "Turn around and leave," Ridge said evenly. "This doesn't have to get ugly." "Oh, but it does." Viper spread his arms. "See, June Morrison has something that belongs to me. A debt 40 years past. I'm just here to collect. The only thing June owes you is exactly nothing." Ridge said, "She owes me a legacy." Viper's voice rose. "Marcus Brennan built the Red Stags from nothing. Built an empire. And this old woman destroyed it with her testimony, her lies, her weakness." He pointed at the church. "Now she wants to do it again. Thinks she can hand over evidence to the feds and make us disappear." Ridge felt ice in his veins. They knew. Somehow the Stags knew about the FBI. "Bobby Hernandez sends his regards." Viper added with a cruel smile. "Turns out he's more loyal to money than memory. He told us everything. The meeting, the evidence, the trap." He looked around at the dark fields. "Where are they, Chen? Your snipers, your tactical teams. Are they watching right now, waiting for me to make a threat so you can arrest us all?" From inside the church, Sarah's voice came over a loudspeaker. "Vincent Creed, you're surrounded by federal agents. Order your men to stand down," and Viper pulled out a phone and held it up. "One button. That's all it takes. One button and my people. People you don't know about. People who aren't here will burn down 6 buildings in town. The elementary school, the hospital, Rosie's diner, 3 residential homes." He paused. "Want to guess whose home is on that list?" Ridge's blood turned to ice. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Viper smiled. "June Morrison cares about this town, about protecting people. So here's my offer. She walks out here unarmed and surrenders. We leave. No fire, no violence, no dead children in a burning school. She doesn't. Well, you'll see the smoke from here. Sarah's voice came over Riddich's earpiece, tight with fury. He's bluffing. We've got unmarked units all over town. If anyone tries to, you sure about that? Viper asked as if he'd heard her. You sure you've got everyone? Every corner, every building, every threat. Riddich's mind raced. This was supposed to be simple. Let them come. Arrest them all. End it. But Viper had flipped the script. Made them the ones trapped. Behind him, the church door opened. June Morrison walked out. She moved past Ridge before he could stop her. Walking down the steps with her head high, wearing her road captain patch-like armor. June, no. Ridge grabbed for her arm. She pulled away gently but firmly. I won't let children die for my mistakes. It's a bluff. You willing to bet their lives on that? June looked at him with sad, clear eyes. I'm not. She walked toward Viper, each step measured and calm. That's far enough, Viper said when she was 10F'd away. Turn around. Let them see you surrender. June turned slowly, facing Ridge and the church, facing the saints who tried to protect her. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Then she smiled, and Ridge realized too late that June Morrison hadn't come out to surrender. She'd come out to give Sarah's teams a clear shot. Everything happened at once. June dropped flat to the ground. Red laser dots appeared on 43 stag vests. Sarah's voice boomed over loudspeakers. FBI, nobody move. Hands in the air. Floodlights exploded from the tree lines, turning night into day. Helicopters roared overhead, spotlights pinning the stags in place. State police vehicles screamed up the access road from both directions, blocking any escape. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Viper reached for his weapon. Don't, Sarah screamed. But Viper was already drawing, already aiming at June's prone form on the ground. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. FBI snipers ending the threat with surgical precision. Viper crumpled. Chaos erupted. Some stags raised their hands immediately, surrendering. Others reached for weapons, choosing to go down fighting. Ridge and the Saints dove for cover as bullets started flying. Federal agents swarmed from the darkness like avenging angels, tactical gear, assault rifles, overwhelming force. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 17 red stags lay on the ground, some wounded, some dead, all disarmed. The rest knelt with hands behind their heads, surrounded by FBI agents, reading them their rights. Ridge ran to where June lay. She was already sitting up, dust on her vest, but otherwise unharmed. Sarah knelt beside her, checking for injuries. Are you crazy? Ridge demanded, his voice shaking. He could have shot you. But he didn't, June said calmly. Those snipers are very good at their jobs. That was incredibly reckless, Sarah said. But there was admiration in her voice. That was incredibly necessary, June corrected. Viper was stalling, looking for an opening. I gave him one and gave your people the moment they needed. Ridge helped her to her feet. His hands were trembling with adrenaline and relief. Around them, federal agents were zipped prisoners, reading charges, securing weapons. The Red Stag crew, 40 years of violence and corruption, was being dismantled in real time. It's over, Sarah said quietly, watching her team work. We got them all. Every leader, every lieutenant, everyone who mattered. What about the buildings? Ridge asked. The threat's already secured. We had units there all along. Viper was bluffing. Just like you thought. Sarah smiled grimly, but he made one mistake. What's that? He thought June Morrison would be too afraid to call that bluff. June watched as Vincent Creed's body was covered with a sheet. Her expression was unreadable. 40 years, she whispered. 40 years running from this moment. Was it worth it? Ridge asked. June looked at him. Ask me that question when Milo graduates high school. When he goes to college, gets married, has kids of his own. Ask me when he grows up in a town where the Red Stags are just a bad memory instead of an active threat. She smiled. Then I'll tell you if it was worth it. Diesel approached, blood on his sleeve, but grinning. Press, all our boys are accounted for. Some bruises, nothing serious, and the Stags. 23 in custody, 6 dead, 14 injured. They're done. June closed her eyes, swaying slightly. Ridge caught her elbow. Let's get you home, he said gently. Not yet. June opened her eyes. I need to make sure every one of these men is processed correctly. Every charge documented, every piece of evidence secured. I need to see this through to the end. She walked toward where Sarah was coordinating with other agents, her spine straight despite her exhaustion. Ridge watched her go and felt something swell in his chest. Respect, awe, and the absolute certainty that Jun Morrison was exactly what the Iron Saints had always needed. Not a fighter, a guardian. Someone who protected not because it made her feel powerful, but because it was right. The helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights illuminating the scene like a stage. And on that stage, 40 years of violence finally ended. Not with more violence, but with justice. 3 months later, the Iron Saints clubhouse looked different. Someone had painted the exterior. Still the same building, but cleaner, somehow brighter. The windows actually let in light now instead of just blocking out the world. Inside, 15 men sat around the table for church. 11 originals and 4 new prospects who'd asked to join after hearing what the Saints had done at St. Michael's. Not bad for a bunch of do-gooders, Diesel said, reviewing their numbers. Community outreach is up. We've got 3 charity runs scheduled and people actually wave at us on the street now instead of crossing to the other side. Makes a difference when you're not known as the club that almost started a war, Marcus added with a grin. Ridge smiled but stayed quiet. The last 3 months had been a whirlwind. Media attention, police interviews, community meetings. The Iron Saints had become local heroes, which made him deeply uncomfortable. They just done what needed doing. Nothing heroic about that. A knock interrupted the meeting. Jake opened the door to reveal June Morrison with Milo beside her. The boy had grown in 3 months, not physically, but in some other way. His eyes were clearer. His shoulders weren't hunched defensively anymore. He stood like someone who'd learned he was safe. Hope we're not interrupting, June said. Never, Ridge said, standing. This is your house as much as ours. June smiled at that. She'd visited often since St. Michael's, helping them organize charity events, teaching self-defense classes at the community center, slowly becoming woven into the fabric of the Saints' daily life. But today felt different. Official. We came to ask for something, June said, pulling an envelope from her jacket. Well, Milo wanted to ask. I'm just here for moral support. All eyes turned to the boy. Milo stepped forward, nervous but determined. He held out a piece of paper. Ridge took it and read. It was an application to become a prospect for the Iron Saints. Dated for his 18th birthday, 8 years in the future. I know I'm too young, Milo said quickly. I know I've got a lot to learn, but I've been thinking about what Grandma said about protecting people. About choosing to be strong instead of just being scary. He looked around the table. I want to be part of that when I'm old enough. If you'll have me. The room was silent. Then Diesel started clapping. Marcus joined in. Within seconds, every saint was on his feet applauding. Milo's face turned red, but he smiled. A real, genuine smile. Tell you what, Ridge said, crouching to the boy's level. You keep those grades up, stay out of trouble, and keep being the good kid your grandma raised. When you turn 18, we'll talk. Really? Really? But until then, you've got homework to do. Deal. Deal. Milo's grin was incandescent. Jun's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away quickly. Actually, there's something else. She pulled out the wooden box Ridge recognized. The one containing her original road captain patch. She opened it and carefully lifted out the patch. I've been holding on to this for 40 years, June said. Kept it hidden, kept it safe because it represented something I thought I'd lost. But watching you all these months, the way you protect this town, the way you live, our original code, I realized something. She looked at Ridge. I didn't lose it. I just passed it on without knowing it. She held the patch toward him. This belongs to the Iron Saints. Not hidden in my closet, but displayed where everyone can see it. A reminder of what we started and what you've become. Ridge took the patch with trembling hands. The leather was soft with age, the stitching still perfect despite decades in storage. We'll hang it in the place of honor, he said quietly, right next to the code you wrote. June nodded, satisfied. There's one more thing, she added, pulling out a final envelope. I've been working with Agent Chen and the FBI. The Red Stag assets, everything they seized when the club was dismantled, is being liquidated. Most of it goes to victims' families and law enforcement budgets. But there was a vote by the federal court about a portion of the proceeds. She handed the envelope to Ridge. He opened it. Inside was a check made out to the Iron Saints MC. The amount made him blink twice. What is this restitution? June said for the Iron Angel for the clubhouse that burned in 1985 for 40 years of fighting a war that should never have started. She smiled. The judge agreed. The Saints have been acting as community protectors without compensation. This is your reward for choosing the right path. This is Ridge couldn't find words enough to buy a proper building. June continued. Enough to fund your charity work for years. Enough to prove that doing the right thing doesn't mean struggling to survive. Diesel let out a whoop. Marcus just shook his head in disbelief. Ridge looked at the check, then at June, then at his brothers. Then we use it right, he said firmly. No clubhouse upgrades or fancy bikes. We build something that serves the community. A youth center, maybe. A place where kids like Milo can learn what strength really means. I was hoping you'd say that, June said. Milo stepped forward again, more confident now. Grandma, can I tell them? June nodded. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His handwriting was careful, practiced, clearly something he'd worked on for days. I've been learning about the Iron Saints Code. Milo said about strength protects. Violence corrupts, and I thought maybe it needs something added for kids like me. So I wrote this. He unfolded the paper and read, Strength protects. Violence corrupts. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and protecting people. Anyway, real power isn't making others scared of you. It's making others feel safe around you. Silence filled the room. Then Ridge stood and started clapping. Every saint joined him, the applause thunderous in the small space. Milo looked at his grandmother, and June pulled him into a fierce hug. Your grandfather would be so proud, she whispered. I'm so proud. I learned it from you, Grandma. No, baby, you were born with it. I just helped you see it. Later, after June and Milo had left, the saints stood in their meeting room staring at the wall. Ridge had mounted June's original road captain patch next to their code plaque. And below it, in a simple frame, he'd hung Milo's handwritten edition. Think the kid's serious? Jake asked about prospecting when he's 18. I think he's exactly the kind of person we need, Ridge said. Someone who understands what we're really about. What are we about? Tommy asked. Ridge smiled. We're about being the family people need when they don't have one. About standing between the darkness and the light. About proving that strength and kindness aren't opposites, they're partners. He looked at each of his brothers. June gave us more than a patch today. She gave us a second chance. A chance to be what the Iron Saints were always supposed to be. And what's that? Diesel asked. Guardians, Ridge said simply. Not fighters. Not warriors. Guardians. Outside, the sun was setting over their small town. Families walked dogs. Kids rode bikes. People went about their lives safe and oblivious to how close they'd come to losing everything. The Iron Saints would keep it that way. Not with violence, not with fear, but with the quiet strength of people who chose protection over power, who chose community over conquest, who chose every single day to be better than the darkness that came for them. June Morrison had taught them that. And Milo, brave, scared, determined, Milo would carry it forward. The boy who'd burst into their garage crying for help 3 months ago. The boy who'd watched his grandmother fight a war and choose wisdom over violence. The boy who'd learned that real strength wasn't about throwing punches. It was about standing up when standing up was terrifying. It was about protecting others even when you were scared yourself. It was about being the light that refused to be extinguished. 8 years from now, when Milo Morrison walked through their door asking to prospect, the Iron Saints would be ready. Ready to welcome home the next generation. Ready to teach him what June had taught them. Ready to prove that a legacy built on protection would always outlast one built on violence. Because in the end, violence was easy, protection was hard, and anything worth having was always hard. Ridge locked the clubhouse door and climbed on his bike. The road stretched before him, familiar and safe, and somewhere in the distance he could almost hear June's voice. Strength protects. Violence corrupts. Words written 40 years ago, words that would echo for 40 more. Words that would keep echoing as long as good people chose to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Ridge smiled, started his engine, and rode home. The end.